who will be leading our session today. And Gloria is a Community Relations Officer at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Office. So very happy to have you here today, Gloria. And if you would like to get started and provide further introduction on your work, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Good morning. So thank you so much. Let me see if we can get this PowerPoint presentation started. You understand how it is with applications, and so let us see. So far, I see nothing. So as we are going along here, I want to thank you all for inviting me to the summit. Again, I don't know why my presentation isn't showing up, but let us try again. Anybody could have helped you to talk about citizenship, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this morning. If for some reason I'm having difficulty sharing, please let me know. Can you see my PowerPoint, yes or no?
We see the screen that you're sharing and it's currently on the Zoom. However,
okay, that's
yet, but we're off to a good start.
Okay, that's not good. If there's some way, how would you like to help me with my sharing screen here?
So you can go through the same process you just went through, but when given the choice of which screen to share, choose the one that has your PowerPoint on it.
Okay, for some reason, I'm not seeing the PowerPoint, believe it or not. Believe it or not.
But you do have it open on your computer right now.
Yes, ma'am, I do have it open. Okay. And so again, as I try to go over these challenges here, I want to thank you. So let us try one more time. And here we go. Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect, we can see it.
Absolutely wonderful. And so again, I said thank you for the invitation. And so much for the challenges of sharing and so much for the challenges of live recording. And so again, anybody could have talked about naturalization today. I do so appreciate the opportunity. I hope that I bring a certain perspective working for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services that maybe other service providers or other presenters may not be able to do so. So this is our disclaimer that certainly says that this is a training module. And if there is anybody online who is of the press, then they could call that number that is indicated there, 202-272-1200 for additional information. Now, I know that many of you are hopefully volunteers and thinking about teaching people apply for naturalization, and maybe some of you have been doing it for quite a while. And so when you say, what makes somebody want to apply for naturalization, when we're finished with this session, hopefully you'll have some more tools, you'll have some more answers to questions to get someone excited. If for some reason my PowerPoint stops sharing, please let me know. And so again, when we talk about the objectives of naturalization, we're going to talk about the rights and responsibilities of U.S. citizenship. We're going to talk about the naturalization eligibility requirements, and we're certainly going to talk about the naturalization process. The wonderful thing about the United States is we will never make anyone apply for naturalization. And so people have the choice, but if they choose not to naturalize, then during their duration as a lawful permanent resident, they have to still abide by the U.S. law, including the federal, state, and the local laws and regulations. And those permanent residents who fail to abide by the laws may have their status taken away through removal proceedings. And so even though we talk about the choice of citizenship, we talk about the rights and responsibilities of a lawful permanent resident until you have attained that citizenship status. And so that means that a lawful permanent resident must still continue to file their tax returns. They must get a Social Security number. They must register with the Selective Service if they are male between the ages of 18 and 26. And they must keep their permanent resident card up to date. That means that that they must keep it, if it's expiring, keep it current, even though if they have an expiring card and they are eligible for naturalization, we would want them to consider applying for naturalization, because certainly when you have attained that particular benefit, then you don't have to worry about renewing your green card again. These are the common reasons that people apply for naturalization: certainly to vote, to obtain a U.S. passport, to run for elective office, or to work for the U.S. government. Maybe some people feel that I've been in my job too long as a community relations officer, and so certainly to be able to be in my position, they would have to have naturalization or citizenship. They can upgrade their family petitions, and they can certainly serve on a jury. I would like to encourage you, though, to encourage the community that you interact with or the students that you will be teaching, that not only do we want them involved to think about citizenship and the every 4-year presidential elections, but that they will consider the local elections, that they will consider, again, the Board of Supervisors, the mayoral race, the council members, the school board members. Again, when we talk about just being an integrated part of the community that they reside in. And so when we talk about naturalization, this is the definition by law. And it says that naturalization is the process by which U.S. citizenship is granted to a foreign citizen or national after he or she fulfills the requirements established by Congress in the Immigration and Nationality Act, or the INA. I also want to remind you of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services mission statement. And so again, when we talk about the interview process and we talk about the role of the Immigration Service Officer, remember that everything that is done in the agency is driven by this mission statement, that U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services administers the nation's lawful immigration system, safeguarding its integrity, and promises by efficiently and fairly adjudicating requests for immigration benefits while protecting Americans, securing the homeland, and honoring our values. And so you may think it's strange that I would talk about the USCIS mission statement, even though we're talking about naturalization. But as I said, when we talk about the foundation of the agency, when we talk about an immigration service officer rendering a decision to determine eligibility of an applicant, it is all resting upon this mission statement. The definition of the statutory period is the 5-year period, or if we're going to talk about the difference between the permanent residents that apply for naturalization, the 3-year period preceding the date up to the application and up to the oath of allegiance. And so even though many of the moral character questions on the N400 asks you, have you ever? We are lawfully, legally looking at that statutory period, but certainly when an applicant begins answering the questions on the N400 application and the questions ask, have you ever, then even though the statutory period is that 5-year or 3-year period prior to the submission of the N400 application, the applicant is encouraged to make sure that they truthfully and honestly answer those questions that say, have you ever? And so when we talk about the basic filing requirements for naturalization, you have to be 18 years old. There is a reason on the N400 application that it asks you, were one or both of your parents citizens, and were you under the age of 18, and were you a permanent resident? Because again, if you were under the age of 18, there could be a possibility that you derive citizenship, and if so, then you would not be eligible to file the N400 application, but it would be more correct for you to file the N600. But again, you have to be 18 years old, be a U.S. lawful permanent resident. You're going to have to meet continuous residency and physical presence requirements, live in the United States district or the USCIS district where the application is being submitted, show that you have good moral character, and you must also show the basic understanding of English, the knowledge of U.S. history and government, and an attachment to the U.S. Constitution. And so when we talk about time as a permanent resident, as I said, most naturalization applicants do it because they've been a permanent resident for 5 years. You also have the option of doing it if you have been married to a U.S. citizen for 3 years, and we're going to go into further detail in a moment regarding that. And then there are accepted circumstances for military service members, of whom we thank them for their service, and veterans and some children born abroad. But getting back to the military, they don't have to file a filing fee that goes with the application. And when we talk about the continuous residency and the physical presence requirement, some of those things may be waived because of the fact that they are serving in the military. And so if someone is applying for naturalization based on marriage to a U.S. citizen, these three requirements have to be in place at the time of filing. And so the applicant has to have been a lawful permanent resident for 3 years. They have to have been married to the same U.S. citizen for 3 years. And that U.S. citizen spouse must have been a citizen for 3 years. And so we talk about this 333 requirement. And on the N-400 application, the applicant has the choice to decide if I'm applying as a permanent resident for 5 years, for 3 years, if I'm a military member or other circumstances under the section of law that is applicable. And so if someone is applying for naturalization based on marriage to a U.S. citizen, then they should not think it's strange if the officer also asks them questions about the status of their marriage, because this is a particular section of law that they are applying under. And if the applicant comes to the office and they say, oh, by the way, my spouse and I separated 2 weeks ago, then the officer, again, is going to have to determine, is this applicant eligible under this particular section of law? Now, I've had people ask, okay, so I've been married for 3 years. I've had my permanent residency for 5 years or more. Do I have to apply for the section of law saying that I'm applying for naturalization based on marriage to a U.S. citizen? That's certainly optional. But again, when you're applying based on marriage, these three things have to be in place at the time. Now, this continuous residence requirement talks about absences between 6 months and a year. And those absences could disrupt an applicant's continuous residence unless they can prove otherwise. And so some examples of that evidence may establish that continuous residence was not disrupted, and that would be on a case-by-case basis. And so some of those examples could include that they retained employment in the United States, that an immediate family remained in the U.S., retained full access to his or her U.S. home, and did not obtain employment while abroad. Absences from the United States of 1 continuous year or more during the statutory period disrupts this continuous residence unless the applicant's absence is due to certain employment-related purposes and the applicant timely filed and has approved an applicant to preserve residence for naturalization purposes, which is the form N-470. So again, when you look at this chart, if there have been absences less than 6 months, then the applicant has met the requirement for continuous residence. If the absence is 6 months to a year, they must provide additional evidence. And certainly if the absence is more than a year, then they have not met the requirement for continuous residence. And so again, when we talk about how does someone overcome this if they possibly have not met the continuous residence requirement, well, it may be as simple as delaying the submission of their application until that continuous residence requirement has been satisfied. This other requirement is for physical presence. And so the physical presence says that the applicant must be physically present in the United States at least half of the 5-year period, or 913 days, according to the section of the INA 316. If they're applying based on marriage to a U.S. citizen, then the 3-year statutory period, the INA 319A portion, equals 548 days. And so this is cumulative. Remember, as a lawful permanent resident, that the applicant can travel outside of the United States up to a year, and they can even ask for permission to stay outside of the United States for up to 2 years by filing an I-131 form asking for a reentry permit. But remember, any absences outside of the United States more than 6 months could possibly affect the continuous residence requirement. But again, the cumulative addition of the time inside the United States has to add up to 913 days or 548 days. And so these things have to be kept in mind when we're talking about travel. And there's a reason that even between the time of the interview to the time of the appearance at the oath ceremony notice asks you, have you traveled outside the United States between the time of the interview and the time of the ceremony? Because we're still trying to monitor that physical presence requirement and that continuous residence requirement. This requirement here says that the applicant has to live in the jurisdiction of the district office or the field office where the application is being submitted. Now, I am a Washington field office employee for Fairfax, Virginia, which has jurisdiction over Northern Virginia and DC. We have a Norfolk field office that has jurisdiction over the southwest portion. And certainly, I don't know if anyone is viewing who are from other states, but again, it would be the local office that has jurisdiction over the decision-making purposes for that application. And if there is a student who's applying for naturalization, then they have the option of using their school's address or using the address of their parents, again, when submitting the N400 application. Now, when we talk about good moral character says that during the statutory period, people have to show that they are of this good moral character when they submit the application, even though, as I told you, that the portion of the N400 that asks those yes and no good moral character questions, the bulk of them say, have you ever? And even though the statutory period is 5 years, to truthfully answer a question, if it says, have you ever, then the applicant is expected to put down whatever information, if the response is yes, whatever attachments they need to do to support that answer. There are certain crimes that are committed. Certainly, if someone kills somebody, then they are never eligible for applying for naturalization. There are certain DUI crimes. One will let you still be eligible. The other will not let you be eligible. And so if someone has anything in their background where there could potentially be a legal issue, then it may be beneficial for them to seek legal advice. And we're going to talk a little bit at the end about how does one avoid scams when they are seeking legal advice and determining their eligibility for naturalization. The other requirement is this understanding speaking, reading, and writing of basic English, and this knowledge of U.S. history and government. This booklet here is an example of one of the study tools that can be found on our Citizenship Resource Center online, and also that we still are printing in hard copy. And so these are the 100 study questions in a nice little pocket guide that someone can use. Again, so we're going to talk about what can assist somebody in becoming better at understanding, speaking, reading, and writing basic English, and what the requirements are currently regarding U.S. history and government. Now, this particular chart here gives an indication of if this person has this age and the length of time as a permanent resident, then they are exempt from being administered the English test, and the civics portion they'll be able to take in their own language. And so where you have the option of being able to submit your application 90 days in advance, when you are filing based on these exemptions, you don't have that luxury. So when we go over this chart here, you cannot submit your application at age 49 and a half thinking, oh, the agency has a backlog, so when they get to my application, I'll certainly be 50 years old. No, at the time of filing, if you are going to claim these exemptions, both the age, if you're 50 years old, permanent resident, 20 years, or 55 years old, permanent resident, 15 years, or 65 years old, permanent resident, 20 years. Again, you're exempt from taking the English test. And then if you're 65 years old, we will administer the test to you in a simplified language. And so even for the old test and for the new test, if you're working with applicants who are submitting their applications or who have submitted their applications after December 2nd, again, for someone who is 65 years old, we have still set aside questions that are considered simplified for their purposes. And as I said, remember, that if someone is filing based on these exemptions, they cannot submit their application early if they have not satisfied the length of time as a permanent resident and the age as indicated on this chart. This disability exception form is a request that a doctor has to certify, saying that there is a condition that links the applicant's disability and the fact that they cannot learn English. And if they cannot learn English, then certainly we cannot be expected to test them. Now, regarding our updated guidance on the N648, A properly completed form has to include the date when each disability or impairment began and the date of the diagnosis, a description of the severity of each disability or impairment, a description of how each relevant disability or impairment affects specific functions of the applicant's daily life, including their ability to work or go to school that may be related to their ability to learn civics or their ability to learn to read, write, and speak words in ordinary usage of the English language, and a statement that the medical condition has lasted or is expected to last at least 12 months, including the explanation of which disabilities or impairments are expected to last more than 12 months. Now, this N648 form has no fee. It is expected that it is submitted with the N400 form. We do understand in this continued COVID environment that some doctor offices were closed and that they have been slow opening up. And so if an applicant has difficulty getting a doctor to complete the N648, yet they feel that they are eligible to have submitted it, at the time of the interview, the applicant should let the officer know that they do plan to submit the N648, that they were unable to bring it with them or they were unable to file it with the N400 application. So this here talks about an attachment to the Constitution. And so all applicants have to show that they are attached to the principles of the Constitution and that they are favorably disposed to the good order and happiness of the United States. And on the N400, there are questions that specifically ask you, are you willing to do some things on behalf of the United States? And also there is some wording in the Oath of Allegiance, again, that indicate, are you willing to do some things on behalf of the United States when required by the law? Those questions on the N400 are yes and no questions. And so the applicant, if any of the responses are no, and certainly in the review of the Oath of Allegiance, if there is an issue, it is at the interview that the applicant needs to discuss this with the officer. Because again, the officer is not going to know your attachment. You are willingly showing your loyalty to the United States. You are willingly submitting your application to become a naturalized citizen. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happens at the interview. Excuse me. And so at the interview, the officer will place the applicant under oath. They're going to give them reading and writing tests. They're going to give them the civics test. They're going to assess their ability to speak and to understand English. And they're going to review the N400 form to determine their eligibility. So again, we talk about in this COVID environment, this is our current sample interview office. As you see, we have taken measures to keep both the public and the officer safe. You will see that plexiglass barrier. We're going to talk a little bit about virtual interviews where the applicant potentially can be in one office and the officer can be in another one. So you see that we are masked up, and certainly visitors to our USCIS facilities must all wear masks. We're going to go a little bit over the visitors policy. Again, there are types of masks: the bandana mask, the alligator mask, and the mask that has a valve on it. You can't have it without an accompanying mask. Those types of masks you cannot wear to our facilities. Again, and we also now have a requirement that applicants coming into our building must have their temperature taken at a touchless thermometer. And so again, any applicant, if the thermometer goes off with a red beep, we're going to ask that applicant to immediately leave our facility. And we're going to also stress to applicants that if they feel sick, we want them to stay home. Again, there will be no penalty if they have to reschedule for their biometrics appointment. There will be no penalty if they have to reschedule for their interview. Now, this here just goes over some of the things that happens during our video interviews. As I said, we are testing the technology, one of having the applicant in an office, having an officer in the office, but also we are beginning to test the technology of having an applicant in one field office and having an officer in another field office do the interview virtually. And so again, we don't want applicants to feel concerned if they come into the local office and they are placed into an office and the officer is not in there with them. Now, the expectation is, remember, the officer is going to place the applicant under oath. And so the expectation is, even if they are in the office by themselves, that they are still under oath and that they're expected to answer truthfully. There will be an iPad in there, and certainly there will be a camera in there. And so when we talk about the visitors policy, again, we talk about minimizing who can accompany an applicant to the office. But again, when we talk about this in-person video interview, it gives us greater flexibility, and hopefully it decreases the risk of exposure to COVID-19 for both the employee and the public. And so again, when we continue this discussion about video interviews, our officers have received guidance and training, and they may have conducted mock interviews. And so again, as I said, that all the interviews, whether they are in person or by video at the USCIS office, they must follow the same adjudicative process, and the format of the interview does not affect the outcome of the adjudication. So again, continuing this discussion. And the video interviews, I know we're talking about naturalization, but our asylum office is also using this particular technology. And so again, we talked about the video having the officer in one room and the applicant in another room, and the interpreter and the attorney of record or the accredited representative can accompany the applicant, or they can be notified by telephone. As a matter of fact, we're probably encouraging the applicant to have their attorney or their interpreter available by telephone, again, so that we can reduce the spread of COVID-19. Again, and so when we talk about using an interpreter, especially when we talked about that chart a few minutes ago, make sure that the interpreter is comfortable using the telephone, because some may not be. Some may be used to being in person and having the applicant right in front of them or having the officer right in front of them. And so that particular skill set of doing the interpreter portion telephonically may need to be reviewed. If we are using the telephone, the officer is supposed to have the volume turned up to its maximum. And so if there's an interpreter or an attorney on the telephone, and if there are any challenges, especially as we all wear our masks, with being able to understand the officer, let the applicant know that they can ask the officer to either speak louder, to speak slowly, to repeat things, again, in this new environment. Again, when we talk about the test portion, we're going to go over the electronic tablet that will be provided. You know, we've been using the electronic tablet now going on a couple of years, and so that portion should not be new. But again, if an applicant is placed in a separate office from the officer, they still are expected to use that electronic tablet. These are resources, again, that are still currently available. Many of you are familiar with that red booklet, Learn About the United States Quick Civics Lessons for the Naturalization Test. I don't know if we're going to be revising it or not, but again, remember that and the booklet below it are all available online. And even for the new test that has the 128 questions, we are in the process of developing our study materials, but online in English and Spanish, the new test questions, 128, are available. So when we talk about our Citizenship Resource Center. So again, let's talk a little bit about the new test. For people who have applied after December 2nd, I understand that we are going to shortly start scheduling applicants who have applied after that date who potentially could be subject to the new test. And so the new test talks about the number of civics questions that will be asked of most applicants will be increased from 10 to 20. And in general, applicants will need to answer 12 out of those 20 items. Now, that still gives a passing score of 60%. And the officer is still going to ask all 20 civics test questions. And that's a little different than administering the old test, because under the old test, the officer would ask 10 questions. But if you got 6 responses correct, then the officer would stop asking you additional questions. Under the new test questions, though, the officer is going to expect that the applicant gets 12 questions correct out of 20, but the officer is still going to continue asking all 20 questions. And applicants who are 65 years of older or who have been living in the United States for a period totaling at least 20 years are provided special consideration, again, similar to that chart that we had showed. And this 65-20 group of applicants will keep the same passing score at 6 out of 10 items, and they're going to be required to study a smaller bank of 20 items as is currently. And those applicants will be asked a total of 10 questions. So again, continuing on, the types of questions, again, as I said, especially for those of you all who are currently teaching naturalization or who are thinking about teaching it, when we talk about some of the phrases that are being used, remember now in the new test, the English portion did not change, only the civics portion. And so again, remember, we revised the civics portion of the test, and it's only for applicants who have submitted their applications after December 1st of 2020. They will be subject to the new 2020 version of the test. And so the updated test includes more questions that test an applicant's understanding of U.S. history and civics in line with the statutory standard than the current test. And the updated test does not include geography questions from the prior test, and they cover a variety of topics. And the geography questions were removed because they weren't sufficiently tied to the statutory standard. And so when we talk about the sections of the new 2020 test, there is an American government section. Part A is the principles of American government. Part B is the systems of government. And Part C are the rights and responsibilities. There is an American history portion. Part A is the colonial period and the independence. Part B are the 1800s. Part C are the recent American history and other important historical information, and the portion that covers symbols and holidays. So Part A is symbol, Part B is holidays, almost similar to the test that we have right now. And so before we start talking about the English reading and writing test, hopefully you're familiar with the components of the naturalization test, some of the words that are used in the English test. Again, when we talk about in the reading portion, we talk about, people, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, question words, how, what, when, where, who, why, verbs, can, come, do, does, elects, vote, want. Again, these are tools that are in place that you can find this information online, but especially you as a citizenship instructor, when we talk about what phrases or what words are used to compile the sentences that an officer is going to ask the applicant under direction to either write or to either read. When we talk about the writing vocabulary places, Alaska, California, Washington, D.C., months, June, October, November, other contents, 1, 100, second, South, taxes, wild, holidays, President's Day, Columbus Day, Thanksgiving, people, Adams, Lincoln, Washington. And so again, as a citizenship instructor, these are the types of things on the Citizenship Resource Center. You can find information to help you create a lesson plan. Our Office of Citizenship has resumed their presentations to citizenship instructors. If you have never logged into a presentation, I would encourage you to look at what they're offering from month to month and take advantage of the courses that they are offering to help you be a better prepared instructor as you try to have a better prepared naturalization applicant. And so again, when we look at the pad, this is the pad that is used for both the reading and writing portion. We are encouraging applicants to bring their own pens, blue and black, to the interview. Again, our offices are wiped down. We may ask the applicant to wipe down their own seat before they sit in it, especially if they are in a separate office. But again, remember, the officer is expecting the applicant to use this pad when they are directed to do so, and to use the accompanying stylus. And so if for some reason the applicant has any issues with the pad, then they need to let the officer know. Perhaps they need to reposition it to be able to do what the officer is telling them to do. And so we're going to briefly go over the reading test portion. Again, when we talk about what determines a pass or what determines a fail for the reading portion of the English. And the writing portion, you will see that there are some similarities. The officer is still going to ask the applicant to read up to 3 sentences. The applicant has to get 1 out of the 3 correct. Again, nothing has changed. the old versus the new. They're not going to be failed because of their accent. Certainly, if the accent affects the officer being able to understand, or it appears that the accent makes it look like the meaning of the sentence has changed, then certainly that could impact the officer trying to determine, can the applicant read, write, understand English? But again, we talked about being able to correctly read one sentence out of an opportunity of 3. A normal pause is fine. If the applicant needs to ask the officer to speak, as I said, a little louder, a little slower, to rephrase, then they certainly have the right to do so. When we talk about the writing test and we talk about, again, what constitutes passing, again, similar to the reading portion, 1 out of 3 sentences, the officer is going to dictate the applicant has to get 1 out of that 3 correct. And so if the applicant fails a portion of the reading or the writing portion or the review of the N400, which is certainly a tool also that is used for the officer to determine, does this applicant understand English, then they have a second opportunity. Within 90 days, we will reschedule them to come into the office to overcome whatever portion of the interview they failed. So again, when we talk about speaking portion of English, as I said, the officer is going to review that N400 application, especially those good moral character questions that ask, have you ever this, have you ever that? The officer is going to repeat and rephrase the question until the officer is satisfied. Now, I know that I've heard some people say that officers have asked applicants, do you understand what the meaning of the word genocide means? Again, if there's anything that happens at the interview and the applicant does not feel that it was something that should have happened, then they always have the right to ask for a supervisor, especially if they feel that the officer is asking questions that is outside of the scope of the interviewing process to determine, can this applicant read, write, or understand English? Again, remember, applicants are generally tested at the high beginning level of ESL. Now, when we talk about loyalty to the United States, remember we talked about the attachment to the Constitution. And so again, I just want to review very quickly. The words are printed on the N400, the words to the oath of allegiance that says that I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. And so again, if the United States reinstituted a draft that included men and women, does the applicant have an issue with bearing arms on behalf of the United States? Does the applicant have an issue with reciting the words, so help me God? And so again, if there is any issue regarding this portion of the oath or those questions on the N400, again, that indicate an attachment to the Constitution, then the officer is going to discuss that with the applicant to determine, does this show a lack of loyalty? Does this show a lack of attachment? Could this possibly affect the eligibility for naturalization? And so when we talk about our oath ceremony, remember, in this COVID environment, our ceremonies are shorter. We don't show videos anymore. We encourage the applicant to go home with their family and to view the official USCIS YouTube videos. We still want the applicant to post their ceremonies to Twitter. There is a USCIS official Facebook page. We don't want the applicants to certify their certificates, to laminate their certificates, because remember, laminating them could show that they have been defaced, and they should be safeguarded just as the Social Security cards. We've conducted judicial ceremonies by video. There is a question on the N400 that asks you, do you want to change your name? And the applicant has the opportunity certainly to answer so. The benefit of changing your name at the time of naturalization is that it's cheaper. The only thing is that if you ask for a name change, then only a judge can do that. And as of right now, the courts are closed. And so if you're changing your name on the N-400 application, there may be a delay in us scheduling you for your ceremony. Now, you certainly can delay not changing your name, and then we can administratively naturalize you, and you can pursue changing your name later. But certainly remember, it's your choice. And if the applicant wants to change their name, they just have to understand that as of right now, the courts are closed, which means that we're not scheduling judicial ceremonies, and it may take a few months before that happens. And so I want to again review what happens if I've got children who are lawful permanent residents under the age of 18 and in my custody. And so if that's the case on the day of the ceremony, if the applicant has these children who satisfy this requirement, the children derive citizenship through the parents. Now, most naturalization applicants then will take the children's green card, the applicant's in naturalization certificate, and go apply for a U.S. passport. Now, again, applying for the U.S. passport is certainly cheaper than applying for an N-600 certificate of citizenship for the child, but it does not update the USCIS database. And if for some reason you need to have our database updated, then the N-400 naturalized citizen would file an N-600 for their child, and the current filing fee is $1,170. But as I said, filing for a U.S. passport for the child is certainly cheaper than that. So when you file for naturalization, we're going to go a little bit in a few minutes to talk about the benefits of online filing and our online resources. All of our forms you can download for free from uscis.gov. One of the ways that an applicant protects himself against scams is making sure that they are on the official uscis.gov website. The filing fee is still currently $725. Remember, the fees were supposed to have increased in October, but because they did not, then the filing fees are still currently as such because of a pending court injunction. And also the fee waiver. We've got an I-912 fee waiver that is available for those applicants who, according to the poverty income guidelines, can show that they are eligible to apply for naturalization. They just don't have the $725 filing fee. And so the I-912 filing fee form is still available, and the I-942 reduced fee form that was created for the N-400 form exclusive use, those two forms are still available. And so the I-942 says, okay, I make more money than the poverty income guidelines, but I still don't have $725. So here's my $320, but you're still expected to pay the separate $85 biometric filing fee. And so again, if the fee increase had gone into effect, the fee waiver form would not have existed anymore, nor would the reduced filing form have existed anymore. And so when you talk about what are the benefits of applying for naturalization now, that's one of the benefits, the current filing fee or the current opportunity to apply for a fee waiver or the reduced form. And so again, when we talk about filling out the N-400 application, downloading it for free from the website, we'll send you a receipt notice. I do want to talk about our lockbox having some delays. You know, we're not the only ones experiencing delays. You've experienced delays with the U.S. Postal Service recently. And so again, it may take up to 30 days to get a filing receipt, but the benefit of online filing is that you immediately get your filing receipt. And again, when we talk about the Application Support Center, I'm going to talk about some additional information in a few minutes so that people don't have questions. But the benefits of filing online, you can get helpful step-by-step instructions as you complete the form. You can only be asked the questions that are applicable to you, saving time in completing the application. And then there's also the avoidance of common mistakes, such as forgetting to sign the application, leaving a field blank, or even using the incorrect filing fee. And so you'll also be able to upload supporting documents. directed to the case, and conveniently and securely pay. I compare our online filing opportunity to when someone creates an Amazon account. One, once it's created, it's already there. And two, the immediate benefits is you get a receipt number, which means that you get an immediate tracking number, and the system immediately confirms that we received your application. And so that gives peace of mind that the application is now with USCIS. Again, when we talk about the benefits of online filing, hopefully applicants find it simple. And if you are teaching a citizenship class, maybe there are some applicants who don't know how to navigate the website. And so maybe that's something that you can help them do. Certainly not help them answer the questions, but certainly let them learn how to navigate the system that we consider is easy in creating an online account. And so this is a video that can be played at one's convenience, less than 2 minutes, that talks about the ease with, I'm going to try to stop it. Let's see if I can stop it. The ease with which someone can go ahead and apply for citizenship. And I apologize. Let us get back to this. The ease with, as I said, someone, please let me know if for some reason the PowerPoint was affected. Again, when we talk about showing that video, that people can look at it at their convenience. So again, as we continue to talk about the benefits of online filing, do you have a USCIS account? We talk about it's easy to sign up, it's free. Again, the 3 commonly requested forms online are the N-400, the I-130 relative petition, and the I-90 form to replace a green card. And again, if you though are applying for a fee waiver or reduced filing form, then you must file hard copy. You cannot file those forms electronically. Again, this is the Spanish version showing the benefits of online filing. When we talk about the Citizenship Resource Center, especially as a teacher, we talk about, again, how do I find lesson plans? We talk about our USCIS resources like the quick civics lessons, the civics flashcards that are available online and that are still available in hard copy in English and in Spanish, the flashcards for naturalization, the test brochure. There's a multimedia presentation that is still out there that talks about the promise of freedom. It's a 12-minute video that goes over the eligibility requirements. And again, what is the cost of freedom? There's a guide to naturalization that is online. And again, if someone needed tips to say, how do I file? What is an example that shows my trips outside the United States? How can I count up that cost? Again, the Citizens Almanac, lesson plans we talked about for teachers that is available. This is our app that can be downloaded from the...
We're still seeing these, like the slide that shows the video. I think there's an option that says resume slideshow that may take us back to the presentation.
Okay. Okay, so I apologize. Let us, okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, yes, now we're on par with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you so much. And so again, when we talk about downloading the app, the study app here, I'm just gonna go back. Again, please forgive me. You can download it. And when we talk about the benefits of the app, oh, I did it again. I'm so sorry. We talk about, when we talk about the benefit of the app, you can do a practice test. You can save your test results. You can practice in Spanish or English, and you can even use a question challenge game. And so again, when we talk about Emma is our online virtual assistant. And so Emma, you ask her questions in both English and Spanish. And so she will help you navigate our website, hopefully easier than you can do it for yourself. But if you find that Emma is not helpful, then you can give feedback to the website to let us know. Because again, when we talk about these self-help study tools, if they are not helpful when we talk about navigating the website, then we want to know that. We have a feature now for the profile when you create your online account. Again, now you can update your profile for every receipt number, where before you weren't able to do that. And so again, this new feature gives you the flexibility of viewing and editing your profile for each receipt number that has been assigned. And when we talk about our USCIS Contact Center, again, when we talk about our online tools, the online account, if you submitted a paper receipt, we are still going to be able to give you your updated status online. Again, when we talk about the online tools, case status, processing times, case status questions, you can change your address online. You can have information sent to you. You can send information to us. And so again, when we talk about these benefits, I want to talk a little bit about the Application Support Center. They did not open up, that's the location that takes your fingerprints and your processing for your photos. They did not open up when our offices opened up. And so we understand that there are delays in scheduling. Now, some applicants, we are reusing the biometrics information that is on file. And that doesn't mean that you can't still submit the biometrics filing fee, even if we reuse it, because you are still expected to do so. And so again, we understand that there is a delay. We just expect people to practice some patience. Again, when we talk about avoiding scams and we talk about legal assistance, do I need an attorney to help me fill out my N400 application? Well, that's certainly your choice. There are some organizations that have applied to be recognized with accredited representatives to help you. Most of these organizations have nonprofit status, which means that their filing charges are cheaper than an attorney. But whether you use an attorney or not is certainly your choice. Now, it may be beneficial to have legal assistance, as I said, when we talk about in the background, if there are some legal issues, especially when we talk about charges of DUI. And so again, when we talk about legal assistance, how do I find help? There's a portion on the website, uscis.gov/avoid scams. And again, it talks about how to do those things. These are some helpful reminders, again, regarding the green card. Remember, we don't make people apply for naturalization, but they are expected, applicants are expected to keep their green cards valid. 6 months or less, do I apply for naturalization or replace my green card? Then you probably can go ahead and apply for naturalization. For applicants now who are submitting applications to replace their green cards, they will be getting a letter extending the validity of that expired card for a year. Again, we acknowledge our backlogs in the processing of the I-90 application. What would happen before is an applicant would apply to replace their green card, and then it would expire. And then, heaven forbid, if an emergency came up, they would try to contact our National Contact Center to get an InfoPass appointment to get an added stamp. And so this letter is similar to the letter that someone who has filed, who has a conditional green card, and they file a 751 to remove the condition, they get a letter extending the validity of the card for 18 months. So this is similar to that. So an I-90 applicant who applies to replace their green card now will get a letter extending the validity of the green card for 12 more months. Remember, that an expired card is not expired status. And so again, as we look at these helpful reminders, we don't want people to submit the original documents because the law doesn't require them to do so. They may have to bring them with them to the interview. We don't need people to apply for new national passports. You bring your old passports again as supporting documents for the trips that have been taken outside the United States. This says no name changes allowed. That's not true. Remember, on the N400, you can choose to change your name, but again, the courts are closed. And so if you choose to change your name, there may be a delay in scheduling your interview. You certainly can continue to travel, but be mindful of the physical presence and continuous residency requirement. If you feel sick, don't feel guilty, stay home. Remember, we're going to test you anyway. And so if that thermometer beeps or it's red, we're going to ask you to leave the building immediately. Again, but we will not penalize you if you are sick. We want you to stay home. We want you to request a rescheduling of your interview or rescheduling of your biometrics appointment. Remember, we have minimized who can come to the office with you. And so family and friends need to stay home. They can celebrate the ceremony with you at your house, in the leisure of your house. If you bring your child, you're only bringing your child because maybe they are the applicant for the N400 application, but you have to be 18 years old. Maybe there's somebody with a disability and you're accompanying them. Remember, we're encouraging translators to be notified on the telephone. Now, I know this is my contact information. As I said, I'm the Community Relations Officer, Washington Field Office. If anybody is from the southern part of Virginia, as a community-based organization, what can you do to help us? Coordinate with us, like now. Maybe the next time I'll get over my technological challenges. It talks about getting involved in the naturalization ceremony. So maybe not right now, but maybe in the future. Post naturalization information on your website. Again, I know that there are some organizations out there that are assisting people with their naturalization. Certainly, my presentation, there are other organizations that are doing presentations regarding naturalization. We've got still continue the public education and awareness campaign. Look on our website, uscis.gov/outreach, to see what other events are listed. Perhaps someone did not register for the event today, or you want the applicants to listen to the same information that I gave. And so they can see presentations that are being given by me or being given by my colleagues across the country. One of the benefits of this virtual environment is we're not limited by geographical limitations. And so my California counterpart may give the presentation that may be at a time that is more convenient than when I am giving the presentation. And again, when we talk about training and technical assistance, take advantage of the Office of Citizenship seminars and trainings that are online. Again, we still are administering our Citizenship and Assimilation Grant Program. I'm as disappointed as you. I don't think in this grant cycle there was a Virginia grantee, but again, we'll just try the next time. Again, when we talk about looking at the resources that are available online, I want to thank you for this time today. Again, I want to encourage you to look at those 128 questions that make up the new test and to go ahead and get ready to prepare those applicants who have submitted their questions afterwards. Again, I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to turn it back over. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for such an informative session. We are right at time, just a minute over, but there are two questions that appeared in the chat. So if you don't mind just answering them.
I certainly don't.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. The first question was, is the new administration considering returning to the prior civics test and eliminating the new test?
So the only thing that I can tell you to do is to stay informed of any of our agency updates. We are currently, again, administering the new test for those applicants who have filed after the December 2nd. If anything changes, you certainly will be informed.
Thank you so much. And the second question was just a reminder of the name of the app that helps in the preparation of the citizenship test.
So you just go look for the USCIS study app for naturalization. There are probably other organizations that have one, but again, there's only one official USCIS one.
And is that the one that was Emma, if I remember correctly? Was that Emma?
Well, Emma is the online virtual assistant. Okay. And so again, yes.
Okay, thank you. And just another question came through, if you don't mind. The question is, which of the groups involved in the RVA area offer citizenship classes? I guess this is more to the agencies that are hosting. Which of the groups involved in the RVA area offer citizenship classes? If I want to volunteer to be a citizenship tutor, how do I go about doing that? And if any of the agencies present would like to speak to that question.
So is the Bay Area, the California area?
RVA, Richmond, Virginia.
Okay, RVA. Okay, so yes.
Hello, my name is Diane Sheehy and I'm the immigration attorney at the IRC in Richmond. Can you hear me, Gloria and others?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you. I think that people who are interested in volunteering could email me and I can refer you to the appropriate agencies in Richmond if there are any that are conducting citizenship classes. And we are also assembling a list of people who are interested in tutoring. So the email would be easy if I gave you the general public facing one, which is immigration.va@rescue.org.
Thank you so much, Diane, for answering that question. There is another question that came through. Are disability accommodations available? So for applicants who may have hearing loss or blindness, are there any accommodations throughout this process?
So that's a wonderful question, and I apologize that I did not review it. On the N400 application, it asks you, do you need accommodations? Certainly online, we have an applicant can be administered the reading and writing portion in Braille. We've got large print available, and certainly they can bring their own sign language interpreter with them, or they can request for one. We do ask, because we have to arrange, especially if they don't bring their own sign language interpreter or they need Braille, maybe to contact the National Contact Center prior to them coming to the interview, just as a reminder that they need the accommodations to allow the local office to have those accommodations in place.
Thank you. And if there are no further questions from the audience, I think we can officially wrap up for today. And thank you once again, Gloria, for such an informative session. Really
Could I, hi, could I ask one question? My name is Wayne.
Sure.
Gloria, first of all, thank you so much. This was so informative. Holy mackerel, it was a lot of information. It's almost overwhelming to think about going through the naturalization process. It would seem to me that I don't know that I could go through it. It would seem to me that someone who comes to our country and is going through the process really does need a mentor or a tutor or something like that. It would seem very difficult for someone not familiar with us to be able to go through this on their own. Is that correct? Do most people have mentors or I guess attorneys? Yeah, but they don't prepare you necessarily in the same way that a mentor would.
So that's a wonderful question, and certainly to encourage the partnership with those of you all who are considering to be citizenship instructors. Whether or not one has a mentor or not, when we encourage our applicants to use our website, and especially, the younger applicants who are more technologically savvy, they may be someone who can navigate the computer. And again, getting back to the question earlier of how do they download the app? So it's the USCIS Civics test, or you look for USCIS to get the app on the App Store or the Google Play Store. But again, we would hope that we have devised our website to be a user-friendly portal for an applicant to find the study materials that they need. And so again, it becomes a personal choice. And then when you talk about creating an online account that takes away the possibility of creating errors when you're submitting your application, then it becomes, again, the personal choice.
Sure. Hearing your presentation makes me even so much more grateful for the local organizations that we have who do assist people with their naturalization process. It's quite a feat.
Absolutely wonderful. And so I would encourage you all to go back to the community again, to talk about the ease of applying for naturalization, to talk about the resources that are available, and to encourage people, how do they get better at English, reading, writing? They practice speaking. Again, when we talk about learning the civics and history, then certainly they're going to have to study. But again, as I said, the tools that we have available online for both the instructors and for the applicants, hopefully it makes the process a lot easier.
Great. Thank you so much, Gloria.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the participants? Okay, if there are no further questions, I think now we can wrap up our session for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And once again,
Thank you so much for your assistance. Have a great day.
have a great day. Thank you, everyone.